So this is an orientation to difficulty. And Rumi, being a great poet, he sees this teaching everywhere. Right? So he even talks about the chickpea. Right? It starts off hard. Then you put it in the pot and it boils, but it wants to jump out of the pot. It doesn't want to be boiled. But the cook takes the ladle, get back in the pot. So he's saying it's like that. Allah is putting us in hot water so that we will soften, so that we will cook. And Rumi said of his own life that it could be summed up in 3 stages. He said, I was raw, I cooked, I burned. And the rawness is our spiritual state before we go through the spiritual path. The cooking is the spiritual path, the spiritual practice. All this prayer and fasting and invocation and discipline. And then the burning is when we become completely enveloped in the fire and completely cooked. And that is the fire of love. May we be cooked, inshallah. And this leads us to this. Rumi says, whoever is not a fish becomes sated with his water. This is another image that he uses throughout, which is that every animal needs water to live. The sparrow takes a little bit. The cat takes a little bit more. The dog takes a little bit more. The horse takes a lot more. The camel takes a lot more. The elephant takes the most. But everyone needs their water, and then they became satiated and they can't take water anymore, except for the fish. The fish never becomes satiated. In fact, were you to take the fish out of water, it wouldn't want to live anymore. And so Rumi uses this because the water represents divine knowledge, divine unity, the ocean without shore. And so we all take a little bit, but then we become satiated. And so this is like dhikr, right? We do a little bit of dhikr, and then we become like, it's too much, now I need to go watch Netflix, right? We become like satiated. But you can develop your spiritual capacity so that you can drink. Maybe now you're just a sparrow, but eventually you can become like a camel. You can take a lot. And so then you make a lot of dhikr. But the goal is to be a fish. And who are the fish? The prophets and the saints, the awliya. They never leave dhikr. They never leave dhikr. They become swimming in the ocean of divine unity all the time. And Rumi has a very funny line, funny image. He said there was a man being chased by hornets, wasps. And he runs and they're stinging him, so he starts stripping off all his clothes as he's going, and they keep stinging him. So then he just jumps in the water. And then while he's underwater, they're not stinging him. It's like, alhamdulillah. But then he has to come up for air. So he comes up for air, they start stinging him on his face, so then he keeps going down. So then he has to keep coming up. So Rumi said, what is this? He says, these hornets and wasps that are stinging us, these are the thoughts of this or that, or he said, or she said, or do they like me, or am I good enough, or am I, right? All of the nafs, this people say now negative self-talk, right? In Arabic it's called khawatir, these promptings that come to us, that distract us, and that ultimately are from our lower self. Isn't it true that we're being stung by them all the time? We suffer much more in our minds than in reality, right? You could be happy and everything's fine outside, but inside you're suffering and going through this, even a story of what might happen that hasn't happened. We're being tormented by it, right? Or something that happened and you're free of now, but you're still tormented by it. La ilaha illallah. So what is the water? It's dhikr Allah. That when we enter into this state of remembrance, that becomes our predominant focus, and those negative thoughts stop, and we stop being stung. But at first, our lung capacity is not very good. So we have to go back up for air, and then we get stung again. But eventually, we can develop our lung capacity so that we can stay underwater forever. And anyone who's been to the Emirates, it wasn't always like that with the tall buildings. Actually, just a couple generations ago, it was barefoot, destitute Bedouin. And what was their livelihood? Pearl diving. And they had no technology. They didn't have like air tanks or anything like this. They would free dive. But they would develop the capacity to stay underwater for long periods of time, 10 minutes, without breathing. This is possible for the human lung capacity. And they would find the pearls, and that was their income. So likewise, spiritually, we can develop our spiritual lung capacity. Don't think, I'm weak, it's hard for me to do dhikr, it's hard for me to wake up for fajr. Don't think of it like that. Think of this as the method. This is the practice. Just like you get stronger, don't think, oh, I'm so weak, I can only lift a little bit of weight. No, lift what you can, and through consistency, you'll find yourself very strong, very fast. Likewise with dhikr. If we're consistent, we'll develop very fast. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said the best actions, the best ibadah, the best worship is that which is done consistently, even if it's a little bit. And this is the same with physical exercise. You can't go to the gym and then just lift everything and then take a month off. If you go just for a few minutes a day, but you're consistent, you'll get strong. It's like that with our spiritual discipline as well. And of course, since we mentioned the destitute barefoot Bedouins, the Prophet ﷺ told us 1400 years ago that one of the signs of the end of time is that the destitute barefoot Bedouins will compete in building tall buildings. Sadaqa Rasulullah. The Prophet speaks the truth. So we can become like water. Actually, there's a line, he says that the awliya, they become like water. They become water, so that even when they're far from water, they are water. Which, I'm from Seattle, so Bruce Lee said, be like water. It's like that. Be like water. That every cell of your body starts to resonate with divine remembrance. And that even if you're not outwardly making dhikr, your whole being is making dhikr. And it's not far-fetched that can be your state. So may that be our state. And then he says, none that is raw understands the state of the ripe. Therefore, my words must be brief. Farewell. Right? So again, only those who have advanced on this path can understand what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to say a little bit. This is the introduction. But what's really important to understand for the framework of the Masnavi is that Rumi has written this book as a manual of spiritual discipline to take us through the stages of self-realization into the divine presence. And even though it appears this story, that story, and it appears on the surface that there's no structure or organization, it is masterfully organized. There's an architecture to it.